Good morning and welcome to day 307 of our 365 days of Bible study. Today we're starting on the book called Q. Now, the book of Q has never been found, but there are traces of it in St. Matthew and St. Luke's Gospels, and you can see that they've both copied from a common source which nobody else has. So what's in Q is not in Mark and it's not in John, but it is there. And so this lost document contains some very important things about Jesus. And so this is the Jesus of this mysterious lost book, Q. Today we're looking at Matthew chapter 3, verses 7 to 10, which is Matthew's version of this story that he shares with Luke. When John saw a good number of Pharisees and Sadducees coming to be baptized, he said to them, "What a brood of vipers you are! Who warned you to flee from the coming rage? You need to bear fruit that is consistent with a real change of heart. You need to stop saying to yourselves that you're descendants of Abraham. Right now, there is an axe being laid into the roots of the trees. Each tree that fails to bear good fruit will be felled and burnt up." Both Matthew and Luke rely on the document called Q right from the start, right from here in the story of John the Baptist and his preaching. They both copy almost word for word, except for one little omission on Luke's part. Instead of saying that John was directing his criticisms to the Pharisees and Sadducees who came, here, as here in Matthew, instead Luke has the criticisms directed at the Jewish crowds as a whole. John said to the crowds coming out to be baptized by him, "You brood of vipers," and so on. Now this must surely be a matter of editorial choice on the part of the two writers. Matthew is writing for a church of predominantly formerly Jewish members, and they would know that John's criticism would really only apply to the conservative diehards among the population. This distinction would have been lost on Luke's predominantly Gentile readership. We need to learn to read the Gospels with this editorial bias in mind. There will be much in Matthew's approach that is coloured slightly by his awareness of the needs of his formerly Jewish readership. Equally, Luke will have had in mind the needs of an audience that had come largely from the classical Greek world, with its mixture of pagan and mystery cults. Much of the subtlety of Jewish sensitivities would have been lost on them. In both Gospels, the main thrust of John's preaching, remains perfectly clear. A change of heart is needed. Who warned you to flee from the coming rage? You need to bear fruit that is consistent with a real change of heart. You need to stop saying to yourselves that you're descendants of Abraham. Faith is no longer a matter of book learning and tradition. It is now much closer to home, in the individual's mind and heart. Some have said that the lost book we call Q was likely the notebook of a teacher or a preacher, and passages like this one would certainly make one think so, with its call to a personal relationship with God and an awareness of the importance of one's conscience. To this is added a flavour of urgency, with references to the coming rage or fury, and the imagery of unfruitful trees being felled. Tomorrow, we move past the baptism of Jesus, which Matthew and Luke copied from Mark, to the next bit of Q that they shared. Mark's account of Jesus' time in the wilderness was very short and sketchy, and Q fills this out for them. And tomorrow, we shall read how Luke incorporated the lengthened account into his text. I'll see you then.